Hi, everyone. Buongiorno. Good morning, Frances.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be with you.
It's a great pleasure. I love many of the things you've been working on. There are at least a couple of ideas, concepts that Philip Kotler and I have considered and tried to build on in the book. And I'm super excited to be here with you today and try to have this exchange of experiences and thoughts with you. As you know, in the book, Philip Kotler and I have tried to distill 10 guiding principles that we thought could guide business leaders all over the world. And the first one, which I really like, is be humbitious. And it's, of course, it doesn't exist as a word, and it's the portmanteau of two words, humility and ambition. And our idea is that today's leader, considering how fast things are changing, considering that their experience is not necessarily what they need in order to survive and thrive in a world, in a different economic reality, if you want. But at the same time, their experience is what they got, is what they can build on in a world where their knowledge or new information, if you want, it's even more important than experience to some extent. So I guess the first question, and of course you're an expert in this field, is for the leaders. What do you think about this idea of being humble enough to admit that sometimes we don't have all the answers, but ambitious enough to be there, to write the rules of the game, to push the limits, and to avoid being overwhelmed by so much uncertainty?
Yeah. So I would say that I want you to, you're being ambitious enough if you've gotten past what your existing knowledge will bring you to. If you know how to do it, you're not being ambitious enough. So what I often encourage people to do is to, whatever they tell me, I'm like, look, what's your greatest ambition? They tell me it and I'm like, okay, and now if we added a zero, I want us to have so much ambition that it outpaces what we know today. And that's where your humility comes in. And I think it's really important. And we want to become the learn it all, if I can use what's a popular phrase. Now, I want to have to learn new things, but my ambition is going to show me the bright light of the learning journey, like where I'm going towards. And the other thing I love about your concept of humility is that it requires curiosity. And so if I'm a learn it all with curiosity and you give me an enormously ambitious goal, I think beautiful things are going to happen. So I love it.
That's amazing. It reminds me of this definition that I read once of innovation. And the definition was innovation is an experiment with unknown outcomes, which is more or less what you're saying, right? If you know where you're going, you're not pushing enough. You're not ambitious.
It's execution.
Enough.
It's not experimentation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. Thank you. And another point, which, well, let me jump straight on the. I mentioned before, one of your ideas had a lot of impact on us, on me specifically, when I was writing the first draft of one of the guiding principles, which is be purposeful.
Yeah.
In that case, the idea is, as you can imagine, to pay a lot of attention to the, corporate social responsibility of the company. Of course, we took into consideration the idea of corporate shared value. So the idea that we should create value for stakeholders as opposed just to offset, compensate our impact. And when it comes to the environment, but of course, it's also about the people, it's also about your employees and so on and so forth. So, and all of that in our idea means being purposeful. One of the ideas that influenced me a lot is something that you've said once about diversity and inclusion. And I'm not sure I'm quoting you, but the concept was probably the order is not right. Probably
exactly.
Should be the other way around. Can you please articulate on that? Because it's a very powerful, simple but powerful idea that I'd like you to explain a bit more.
Yeah. So I have seen loads of organizations attract diversity and never become inclusive. And so diversity may or may not lead to inclusion. I have never seen an organization that was inclusive, intentionally inclusive, that didn't also become magnificently diverse. So just from my operations probabilistic brain, you want to end up with both, because the diversity is our potential, right? How much difference I can handle, that's my potential. But that's the limit of how awesome I can be. but I have to be inclusive of all of that awesomeness. So if I want to win, I need a lot of diversity and I want to be inclusive of it. But when we attract diversity first and we're not inclusive of it, we're just getting a small little thing. And then we get on what I call a diversity treadmill. And it's, it stinks for the folks that are different. We don't perform well. But if you begin with inclusion and you learn how to be inclusive of everyone, and when you make the world better for some, you do it in a way that makes it better for all. When you learn how to be inclusive, you will be a diversity magnet. You will get the best, not just of people who are like you, but you will get the best of people who are unlike you. And that, of course, is what we want to do.
That's exactly what I had in mind. So I wasn't quoting you, but at least I didn't go too far. And part of being purposeful is trying. That's a guiding principle, right? So it's a recommendation. And the idea is try to have as much respect as you can for your people, but also for your suppliers, for your business partners, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, being a practitioner and being involved in many conversations with CEOs and top managers, when I talk about this idea of being purposeful beyond D&I or sustainability or specific aspects, sometimes they challenge me and they tell me, well, I like the idea. I like the idea of sustainability. I like the idea of D&I. I like all of that. And I want to evolve. I want to transform, in some cases, my organization to embrace all of that. But let me give you a specific example. He told me once, one other CEO told me once, a few months ago, this was after COVID, we were still recovering from the, the COVID and the aftermath of COVID. And at some point, my CFO came to see me and asked me, do you want me to prioritize employees or suppliers for the payments? Because this month we don't have enough money to pay on time everyone. So I need to postpone and to be late, probably a couple of weeks late, either with our employees' salaries or with our suppliers' invoices. In that case, what does it mean being purposeful or trying to act as a leader in the right way?
Well, so I'm just going to take the constraint as a given so that it really is a trade-off. I'm not sure that every organization would or should make the same decision. If I am competing based on the best talent in the world and that I attract and retain world-class talent, I'm paying my employees first. But if I am competing because I have the greatest network of suppliers, I'm paying my suppliers first. So I think what you want to do is find which one is fulfilling your purpose, which one is, so if it were, I'm sure we could come up with examples, but if your supplier is Walmart, you got to pay them first because you're going to lose, or if you're in a supplier relationship with Walmart, you got to pay them first. So I would, if I had to give a sequence, I'd say employees first, suppliers second, but I am sure there are organizations that need to do suppliers first. So my answer is be consistent with your purpose and you learn at extremes. And this is an extreme. Now, I can't help but think, I wish you had asked me a question earlier because I would have helped you avoid this problem. But given that this is the problem, that's do the one that's internally consistent with what you're doing. And if you ever say our differences are people, that actually answers the question.
I guess this leads to this idea of trade-offs, right? That we always have if you want to. And how do you deal with the others? Let's say you prioritize your people. What do you say to your suppliers or vice versa? How do you explain and how transparent do you think? And again, I agree with you. There is no one size fits all. But what is the rule of thumb or the guiding principle?
So first, I think, it's akin to when you have to do a layoff, a layoff is a failure of management. Oh, management has failures, but it's a failure of management. And so you have to explain what went wrong, what's the lesson learned. You have to take personal responsibility for it. Well, you got to do the same thing here. If I can't pay my supplier, it's a failure of management. So I have to explain what went wrong. I have to give you confidence that I'm fixing it so it's unlikely to happen again. I want to do it with empathy and with consideration. So I think you have to apologize, take responsibility, have the transparency of what happened so that you have confidence that I have learned my lesson. Because if you don't have confidence that I have learned my lesson, you'll stop supplying to me. It's like, I remember when the same day that when Elon Musk took over Twitter at the time, and he did some layoffs, and it was a disaster. Stripe did layoffs the same day. Not a disaster. They both published their letters. It was like a Saturday Night Live skit, the difference between them. You got the sense that Stripe was learning all the lessons from their failed management practice of doing it. And you got the sense that Elon Musk thought he was taking a victory lap and didn't really care about the humanity on the other side. So treat it as what it is, your failure, and give people the confidence that you are learning with, what did you have before that? Humility. You are learning with the humility, and you give and it's not going to happen again because you're going to learn all of the lessons for it.
Love it. Fair enough. And it's more or less what everybody's trying to do these days, right? Try to cope with this ambivalence in many situations. The last question for you today, or the last idea that I wanted to exchange with you, is one of the guiding principles is, of course, be human. And it's this idea that when it comes to retail, you still need to figure out what is the role of physical stores and what is the role of human beings within physical stores. There are already fully automated stores managed by robots, and there are stores, I'm thinking of luxury brands, for example, where the sales ritual is very important. And the bottom line in the book is tech is cool, but people are warm. And so trying to figure out what is the position on the continuum for your company in the next few years, considering the power of artificial intelligence, will determine winners and losers. And, I run a creative agency. And of course, I'm thinking, what is the impact on my industry? And I just don't want to be the next Blockbuster or Kodak and be disrupted by something that I today can try to consider an integral part of what I do, trying to embed this innovation.
Yeah.
But I guess the elephant in the room is always the same, right? What is the role of people in a world that is changing at the speed of an algorithm, in a world that will be dominated by AI, and how much we should give up, what we should give up, and in which situations humans will make a difference. I know it's a $1 million.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So here's what I would say. If I think about tech is cool and people are warm, I'm not sure that that's going to unleash all of the insight, because AI is actually probably red hot. So AI is not like the robot. The robot is cool, is inhuman, but AI is actually human accelerating. It's going to free up the time and space so that I'm not doing the things that a robot could do. I'm only doing the value add. Why do I get to do it? Because of AI. So I think use AI in a way that it lets the people burn even brighter, to use your metaphor. And I find, I think AI is like the greatest technological revolution in my lifetime. It makes me a better teacher, makes me a much better teacher. It makes me a better student. I have watched tech companies. So if I go back to my layoff example, ServiceNow is one of the few companies that didn't have layoffs during that period where everyone had layoffs. Why? Because they used AI to slow hiring in advance of everyone else doing the layoffs. Use AI to burn warm, to burn hot. Let AI be on the hot side, not the cool side. And I think really beautiful things will happen.
But what about this idea that AI at some point can even be warm, in the sense of you can ask ChatGPT to create a fairy tale that you can read to a kid before he or she goes to bed. And is that something, and can be very warm? Of course, if there is a human being instead of a robotic voice telling the story, it's different. And that's
so I think AI, the AI I'm talking about is the AI that when I'm ascending the stairs to go put my kid to bed and I can't think of a story, and I want to tell the story and I've been exhausted, and AI, as I'm ascending the stairs, can give me the story to tell. That's what I mean. I don't mean to send the robot up. That's cool. I want but I want AI. I want to be AI enabled so that I can have the creativity. Because I got to tell you, my son gets a little bored of my stories. But if I go and get I can now have infinitely creative. I want a bot with your creativity. Send me your bot so that if you're not available, I can ask it and get those things. So I want the warm side of AI, and I think that's the part that's going to be really exciting.
So do you think stores will survive? We will always have physical stores in the future?
Listen, stores have been wildly inefficient for so long, and I have wondered how on earth they exist. So do I consider that there will be a reckoning so that stores will actually become productive hubs? Yes, I think we are going to get the revolution that we have needed for decades. And I look forward to it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for answering the questions and to be so concise but effective as usual. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.